Hey Jackal, I was watching Zeryu, he's a World of Warcraft streamer, and this got my attention. It's a travel map from point A to point B, and it's a transition, I just paused it. And this is my take on it. Now let's get digital. Now before I go into it, the things that I'm missing are some sounds. They make everything much better, so you'd have some walking sounds, maybe some popping sound, and at the end a flip page sound. Now with that out of the way, and if you want to follow along, you'll want to download the map. Type in this in the search, classic Azeroth 30 by 30 inch map. As you can see, the map is quite big. You'll want the front one. Once you have this downloaded, it is quite big. I'll just open this one. I made it smaller. Now you can't just open it in Paint, it's too big for Paint. You can use Photoshop. I used Krita. GIMP probably also works. So I'll show you how you can scale it down in Krita. Now you don't have to scale the map down because it is high quality, but I think the quality will still be high enough even if it is scaled down. So you can go to Image, Scale Image to New Size. This is set in pixels, so you can set this to percentages, and I've used 25%. Hit OK. On the right side, as you can see, it's scaling it down. It's a little bit slow, maybe this is faster in Photoshop. Now the image is scaled down, and let's see, this is 100% image scale. Now the quality is not the same as it was previously, but I think it's still good enough. Then you can simply save it, and that will be it. Now what do you lose? You don't have any texture, so this is 25% size, this is 50% size, so you do have some texture here, and 100% size. As you can see, you have a lot of texture, so if you do want this texture, you won't want to scale the image down. What you'll want to do is go to DaVinci Resolve, right click on the map, and generate optimized media. In my case, I just didn't want to do that, I wanted a smaller image size. And why we want to do that is when we make a fusion composition, which is what we'll do now. So open the media pool, right click, make a new fusion composition, put this onto a timeline. You can extend it if you want, then select it and go into the fusion page. Now you will need the image, so open the media pool and you'll find the map, so put it in. And I also have some icons. Now I've typed in simply WoW free horde banner sprite. In this case, you'll just want to right click here, image, save image as PNG, because if you click on it and go to the website, you will see that you now have save image as, and this will be a WebP format, which is not what you want. You want a PNG, so you have a transparent background. And as for the starting icon, you have a bunch of them, so you can use one of these. I opted for this one. What I needed to do in this one, so in this case, I've opened the snipping tool, made a new selection, like so. So this is the image. And since I already have it, I'll show you how you can fix the background. So this is the image. And if you want to get rid of this background, luckily for me, this is a solid color, so we can simply go with Shift space, type in key, and use the 3D keyer. Simply click the mouse over this section that you want to remove, and you'll get a transparent background. So this will be one icon, and I have the second one, which is this one, and this one is already transparent, as you can see. So now first off, we have to do something with this image. As you can see, it's too big for this composition. By default, my composition is 2560 by 1440, so this is what I'll use at the end. So I have the background node. I'll set the alpha to 0, so it's transparent, and then I'll add a merge node at the end, and this will be my last node. Now if I connect the map, this is what I see. So we need a transfer node to position the map and also change the scale. So you can go from point A to point B. And let's see how much we can zoom in, maybe 10 times. I think 10 times is still okay. So this would be the actual quality when the screen is at 100%. So let me go back to size 5. So I'll use this transform to position the map and make the animation. And at the end we can move everything together by using another transform. This will be the transform that will adjust the whole map or the whole composition, including the icons. But what we also need to do is have an overview of the whole map. So if you want to make the path from this point all the way down, we actually need to see it so we can make the path. So I'll leave the transform to default at this moment, maybe even size it down. And like in my previous video, I will use a mask paint node. You could also use a paint node if you want. I just like working with mask paint. So I'll use mask paint node, a background node to change the color of it, and I'll connect it like so. And with the mask paint node, I'll select the polyline stroke. So I get these options. Now I can zoom in a little bit. And let's see where I'll start. Maybe at this point. And I'll just make my own path. Now we have some issue. Do you know what's the issue? Because the path does not come all the way down. The issue is with this background node. It's the same size as my composition, which is not correct. It has to be the size of this media in. So in this case, it should be the size of 4800 by 13620. And now as you can see, we got a whole different result. So because this is now not correct, I'll simply delete this mask paint node and make a new one again. Now as you can see, by default the brush is selected and it's an oval shape. So you have to select the polyline stroke to get the polygon. And why we're using the polygon, I'll show you that in a bit. So maybe this is the path. We'll want to adjust the size. Maybe this will be a solid brush. This will depend on what you want. But now the mask paint node has the stroke controls. We can use the write on function to animate it, which is what we'll use. But we also have the spacing, which makes dots. By default, 1 is maximum, but you can double click and change the value, maybe to 2, and adjust it to what you need. Now we can change this back to solid, change the size of the dots, maybe increase the spacing. Now in the background node, we can change the color, change this to maybe bright red. What we also need in the mask paint node is make the animation. Now my composition has 30 frames for 1 second. So I will make the animation at frame 30. This is 1 second pause at the beginning, and it will end maybe in 5 seconds. So in total, 180 frames. So we have a nice slow animation. And also what you want to do is right click here, press cache, go to playback, timeline proxy resolution, use quarter, so the memory won't get clogged up, and this will play in real time. So this is the animation. Now of course this is blurry, but we can add some drop shadow to this. So shift space, shadow, and I'll use this one, drop shadow. Now just for this I'll go back to the playback and scale this back to full, so I can actually see the drop shadow. So let's see, drop distance, so we have to make this tiny, reduce the blur to also a small amount. You can increase the strength if you want. That's looking good. Now what we can also do is in the merge node, we can change the apply mode. This will depend on the map, but in this case, let's see, I'll just see which one looks the best to me. Now you may want to choose spin light, linear light, vivid light, hard light, or normal. There is not a lot of difference, but it is noticeable just a tiny bit. So in this case, I'll just use spin light. Now I'll set the timeline resolution back to quarter, so I can make my composition in peace, so it doesn't crash. Now what we want to do is, let's see, this will be the ending. We can go to the beginning with this image. Now in my previous video, what I've done is I've simply added the images to the beginning and the ending. You can do that automatically, as I have shown you in that video. What you'll do is select the mask paint node, right click here for a shape animation. So let's do that. And we'll click publish. So we get the polygon or the path of this shape. And for these images, we'll now need the transfer node. So this one will be at the end, I'll put it here, and this will be at the beginning. A transfer node here, I'll connect it to here. With this transference selected, we can go to the center, right click and click on path, because we want to connect it to this path that we made. Now the modifier tab shows up, you can click on it, right click here for shape animation, and connect it to the polyline stroke 1 polyline value. Now this connected it, but as you can see the path is tiny.
A few moments later.
Now to fix this mess, because the path is tiny, as you can see, and the image is quite big, and the path is way off from the original, I have copied this background node, because the image is set to the size of the original media in image. So if I display it on the left side, as you can see, this is the size. And I have set the color to black and lowered the alpha to 0, so it's transparent. I've added the merge node. This will be connected like so and like so, but the merge has to be switched. So select the merge node, Ctrl T. So the background is in the back is yellow input, and this is in the front, and this is now almost complete. Why do I say almost? Because the image is connected to the path. We can move the image by changing the displace, but it's still a little bit offset and it's a bit big. And to fix that, we'll simply take this transfer node, press shift, hold shift, and position it here. And now everything is as it should be. If you now want this icon to be at the beginning, we'll simply select the displacement node, unkeyframe it, and position it to 0, so this will be the beginning. We can also change the scale to size it down, and let me go to playback and see what the resolution actually is. Now I don't want to change the position of the center X or Y because this is the path. If you want to change the position of the image by a little bit, you can go to the merge node and change the position here a little bit. And as you can see, the image doesn't really stand out. So what we can do in that case is after the dekeyer, we can maybe add a color corrector node, increase the saturation a little bit, or even change the color, maybe change the gain and the gamma. But you could also add some glow. So let's see, glow. Now that's looking hot. Now with the images, you can have them be static and immediately visible. If you don't want that though, you could go to one of the merges, either this one or this one, and animate the blend. So in this case, because the animation starts at frame 30, we could maybe animate the blend at 20, set it to 0, and maybe it's visible on frame 26. So we can have something like that. Let me purge the cache and set this back to current resolution. Now I just have to make sure that I increase the map by a good bit, so the whole screen space is filled in, and then I can make the animation. I just have to decide how much I want to zoom in. Now I do already have the path that is animated, so in this transfer node I can connect the path to the center position and have it animated like that, or make the animation manually. But let's see what kind of animation we'll get if I connect it to the center position. Click on path and connect it to the polyline stroke 1 polyline value. So in this case, it's not the best, as you can see, because the path is moving around and so is the image. So I will remove the path and position this to how I want and just have the movement be linear. Maybe we'll start the movement at this point and then the animation stops at frame 180, so maybe the animation will stop at 160. And this is a lot better in my opinion. So we have that done. We now have to do the ending image, which will be similar to this one. So this transform will go here. Let's just connect it so we can see it. So this transform has to be similar to this one. We'll have to connect the path to it. So click on the center position, path, modify, right click, connect it to the polyline stroke 1 polyline value. Go to the path tree, uncheck the displacement and set the displacement to 1. Now again, this is at this point, so I'll copy the background node here and the merge node to connect it in between. Switch the inputs so the background is in the back and the media in is in the front. And we can add another transform, just so this one has to do with the path and this one will have to do with the actual positioning. So we can scale the image down. So let's see, before I do that, maybe we can actually adjust the pivot point. So let's see, if I adjust the pivot point here, like so, scale it down, and adjust the angle. So I guess I'll do the animation in this node, and adjust the final position like so. And then in the merge node, I will also make the animation in the blend node. So at frame 80, not visible, keyframe this. At frame 190, it will be visible. Now I'll increase the proxy resolution so I can actually see it. So in this transfer node, which also has the path, I'll be animating the size and the angle. By default, this is a little bit too big, so the ending size can be maybe 0.5. I will adjust the pivot point by a tiny bit, so it is just about down here. Hold Ctrl to get precise values while you adjust the pivot point. And in this bottom transfer node, I can adjust the position. And then we have to decide on the direction. So in this case, maybe I'll just lean it to the left side. Now the bender comes in at frame 180. I can animate not the position, so I can animate the position in this one if I want to make it come down. So it will come down maybe frame 194. This will be the final position. And the starting position will be like so. That's good enough. And now in this transfer node, I'll be animating the size. So if this is the final size will be on frame 200. We can always come back to change the keyframes. If 194 is the impact, let me go here and this will be 0.5. And I want to uncheck it so I can only animate the Y size. And 194, this comes down, so it hits the ground, but before it does, so at 193, this will also be 0.05 and then it hits the ground. So in between these two keyframes, the Y size will shrink. And I have to purge the cache so this doesn't crash. Now this will be final point of the impact, so I can also start animating the angle at this point. And it will be something like that. That's great. Now the only thing that I want is to maybe also add some shadow as we have here. So let's add a shadow so we can have the drop shadow. What I'll actually do is I'll connect this transfer node to the drop shadow and then I'll be merging these two nodes. Now I have something funky going on. In the drop shadow, what you want to do, let's see, So this is not the drop shadow that I wanted. So let me add shadow. And I want to choose this shadow. And what I wanted to choose this shadow for is the output, because I can have shadow only. So this is now shadow only. Let's see, in the merge node, I can position it up. What happens to the angle? So the angle is way off, because the pivot point is also way off. So let me add the transform node. Now I can adjust the angle, but I'll have the same issue, as you can see. But maybe this is good enough. Hold Ctrl for fine precision. Now the shadow has to be in the back, so with this merge, Ctrl T, so the shadow is in the back. In the transfer node, uncheck the XY size and scale down the Y. Scale down, not scale up. Now this is why you want this pivot point to be where the image actually is. So let me try to position it to the actual image, as that makes the positioning of the final image a lot easier. Now I'm sure this action can be done in a better way, but this is how I've done it. Now what you can do is in the shadow, you have the softness. What you also have is in the settings, you can adjust the blend. This will blend in the banner or the image, which is something similar to shadow only or image with shadow. And then in the transform, you also can adjust the blend. In this case, it does not work out how we may want, because ideally this shadow would be on top of the banner. Now one thing that we can also do is change the apply mode for the shadow. The way I have it set up, I can't really do that, because this merge node applies to the image as well. So I could quickly grab a background node, have a merge, put this in the back. The background node will be transparent, then put this in the front and connect this merge to this one. And now in this merge, I can affect only the shadow. In this case, the blend modes do not want to apply. I'm not really sure why, but at least I can adjust the blend. Now that is basically it. It is a bit of work to set up, but once you do, you can simply adjust the path and the images will follow the path. And then you would also have to fix the animation for this one, where you follow the path. But that is also easy to do, as you just have 2 keyframes. Now you can also export this as a template, as I have shown you previously. You just have a lot more nodes to export and adjust, so you can then edit them in the edit page. Now this is what I ended up with. In the inspector tab in the edit page, I also increased the zoom and made slight adjustment to the animation, but the original animation stayed. I just had to fix this positioning and the animation because I've increased the zoom. And this is the result that I got. And again, I could add some sounds to make this transition feel nicer. And that's it for this video. If you found it helpful, you know what to do. I'm Simon, and until next time, Jackal, keep it digital.